Howdy folks, this is Just at Metcalf Mills. I missed y'all last week. I hope somebody out there missed me. I had some traveling I had to do and there wasn't much service where I was at. I tried to make a video for last Tuesday and I just couldn't get it all to work with no service and everything else that was going on. But anyway, I'm back and looking forward to getting back to making videos and sharing them with you and trying to catch up on all my emails and comments and all that stuff. So I'm bringing you Storytime Tuesday today. It's a continuance of 2 weeks ago about the water mill that I built. And last time we talked about the water wheel and I told you a lot about that. And we'll move on to talking about the structure of the thing. So after I got the wheelhouse built, got the water wheel shaft in and everything, then I started building the building. And the basement down there of the mill where all the gearing and everything was, I dug that out and built just a concrete block foundation, poured a concrete slab down there. And that's where the belt come off of the master wheel to a line shaft, which the line shaft was in the basement. It went all the way across the width of the building. And then a belt came off of that to go upstairs to the grinding mill. So that's how that worked. All the wood for the mill house was hemlock that I milled. There was just a handful of boards that I did not mill in that thing. And it was all, like I said, hemlock. Which is one of the best woods here in the mountains, but it's got a disease now called the fuzzy adelgid, and it's killed a lot of our hemlock. And it's a evergreen. It's kind of in the pine family, and it's a real good quality wood. It's kind of bug resistant, and it's a little mean to work sometimes just because of the way the grain is, but it's a good strong wood to use. For framing and just all kinds of things. I milled the floor joist for the building, which was 2x12s. Then it had a lumber floor on top of that. All the walls were scantling 2x4s. Had weatherboard siding on the outside of the building that I milled on my sawmill. And I done quite a bit of ornate woodwork on the building itself. And I built on the back side was a corn crib, and then beside that was the back porch, or where you go in the main door of the mill. And on the corn crib, that was just a rectangle room. And for the framing on the outside, on top of the framing, like I talked about the old corn cribs, I put hardware cloth, or rat wire as some people call it, on the outside of the framing. And then I put the strips on top of that to hold it in place, and I left like 2-inch gaps between each strip. And that was for a place for the corn to go into to hold the corn until it was to be ground in the mill. And later on, the owner decided that he wanted to go a different route with his project and kind of more commercialize it. And I wound up changing the corn crib into a grain bin to hold a shelled grain. And what I did with that is I come in the corn crib inside and I built a sloping floor that was on a pretty good angle. Maybe like a 40-degree or a 45-degree angle sloping to one side. And then on each end, I built a sloping floor down to a point in the middle. So it was kind of like half of a square hopper that funneled all the grain into one spot. And that was for the purpose of when you open the gate on the grain bin, it goes into an elevator to be took upstairs to a garner, which is a grain bin to be held before it goes into the hopper on the grain mill to be ground. So the inside of the building, after the plan was changed, it changed as well. We wound up putting some yellow pine tongue and groove for the interior of the building. And the hearse frame that I built was about waist high in one end of the mill. And that was to get the grinding mill up to a height that it would work good as far as being, you know, you want a mill up higher so that when it comes out of the spout, you ain't down on the floor trying to get your mill or your flour or whatever you're grinding up. So if it's up high and you set your mill box there, you can dip out of it and sack up your product without having to bend over, and that makes it real nice. So the way this worked, we had the hearse frame, the floor, and there's a little set of steps that went up there to where the grinding mill was. You go up the steps and up on that kind of a platform like and get around the mill, do whatever you needed to do, check stuff, put grain in the hopper, whatever you needed to do. Also on that, up on the grinding floor there was a gate valve and a 6-inch water line coming in, which I think I already told you on the other video, but this water pipe come out of the pond up in the holler, and it was a siphon system, so we didn't dig through the dam. It come up out of the pond underground, but it come up and over, and the way that works is it siphon draws the water out, so you don't have a weak spot in the dam on your pond where water will seep out after you dig through there and put the dirt back. Water will still always seep through there, so that alleviated that problem with the siphon system. The 6-inch water line come down to the mill, into the basement, across the basement, 90 degrees straight up in the corner, up through the upstairs grinding floor, and that's where the gate valve was, and it was just, I made a wooden handle for it, and you just crank it, and it opens the gate in that pipe, and it allows the water to flow out up to another 90 degree and out into the sluice box above the water wheel to then go down on the hill and down on the wheel and make that turn. So that's how that worked. The belt come from up downstairs. It came up from in the basement onto the grinding mill pulley. To make that work, I built a freestanding grit separator for the mill. After the product come out of the grinding mill, if you wanted to separate cornmeal and grits, you scoop it up, take it over and pour it in the hopper on the grit separator that I built, and you get two products out of that, cornmeal and grits. On the opposite end of the main floor, as the mills, there was a table all the way across the end there for sacking and doing different things like that. Between the two and the kind of on the back side is where the stairs went down to the basement. Right next to the stairs was the big 8-foot wooden master wheel that run the belt downstairs to the line shaft to make everything work off of the water wheel power. Behind that, above the stairs in the back, is where the stairs went up. They went up halfway and they turned and went up to the center of the building so you could get up to the attic space. You could access that because that's where all the elevator caps and all that was going to be. That never got installed, but that's where it was going to be. And I remember when we was first trying to get the water to run onto this wheel, everything was hooked up and I opened the gate valve and nothing happened. And you know, it was kind of an exciting time getting ready to turn water on the wheel for the first time. And you know, I opened that gate valve up, nothing happened. Nothing happened. I shot all the elevations. I shot the elevation of the pond water level. I come all the way down before I built any of this. And I figured what elevations we'd have from the pond down low to the water wheel to figure out how much head we had, and that's how much fall you got from the water to the wheel. And I got pretty worried, I'll be honest with you. And I checked down in the pipe, and the water level was just right there. I mean, it was right there, but it wouldn't flow and go out onto the wheel. So I fooled with that pretty much all day, never could figure out what was going on with it. And the bad thing about it is, there have been water mills built where the proper calculations wasn't done, and they didn't have proper fall to get the water on the wheel, and that's a big problem. So I was worried about that. I think it was the next day somebody was over there doing something with that water line, didn't just feed the mill, it went on down to another, like an irrigation system, and the owner or somebody was fooling with the irrigation part of it, and apparently it had got airlocked somehow. So when the water started flowing down to the irrigation, it also started flowing through the pipe onto the water wheel. So I get a phone call and a bunch of excitement on the other end, and said the water wheel's turning. So I wasn't even there the first time that it was running, but I was excited to hear that it was running. So then, of course, we went back over there and I turned it on, and everything worked perfect like it should. I did have somebody tell me beforehand that what I was trying to do with a 6-inch water line, it couldn't be done, it wouldn't work. But I just felt like it would, and went on with it against experienced advice, and I don't advise doing that. I always take experience. Somebody's giving me advice from experience, I always try to listen and heed to that, but it wasn't making sense to me that particular time, and the mill worked without a problem. It ground grain and done a good job, so that worked out. Sometimes if you know you're right, you just have to go on, and you can't slow down or stop. You just got to keep going, and sometimes that's the case in life. And thank goodness that time I didn't listen to advice, or we may have not, that water mill may have not been in existence. But the outside, I done quite a bit of ornamental woodwork on the outside of the mill, on that little porch that's beside the grain store, the corn crib on the back side there, the grain bin. On that porch, I put a handrail on the lower end of the porch, and for the pickets, I drawed a pattern that was corn stalks. So each board for the pickets, in the center of it, I cut out so it was, it came up and it's just like a corn stalk. Come up there, and then it had a tassel on top. And I cut those out on each of those pickets, and it was like a row of corn stalks on the pickets on the end of the porch for what goes under the handrail. Also, the wooden lock that I built for the back door, the main door of the mill, I made a wooden lock out of locust. And it has a wooden key that you open it with, and you cannot open it without that key. And the way this lock works, inside it's got 3 grooves, and in each groove there's a tumbler, and it's just a little wooden block with a notch in it. Under this is the slide latch. The slide latch has 3 notches in it. Those little wooden tumblers go down into the notches on the slide latch, okay? The notches up here in the tumblers is where the key slides in. So you got your 3 tumblers down in the notches on your slide latch. When you slide that wooden key in, the notches in the tumblers, that's where the teeth are on the key. When you slide that wooden key in and you pick up, it lifts those little tumblers up so that then it lifts them up out of the notches on the slide latch, and it allows you to open that slide latch like this. So if that makes sense, stick the wooden key in with the teeth, pick up on the tumblers, then you can slide the wooden latch and unlatch the door to get in. And I did get locked out a time or two. Just forgot my key, because you can't lock. The way it works, if you've unlocked the lock and you got it open, the key won't come out until you lock it back. So I just forgot my key, and then I had to go borrow the owner's key to get in. You can't get in without a key. On the corn crib part, it had a door like 2x2 that you opened to get into the crib, which those doors were obsolete after we turned this into a grain bin, because that's just getting, the doors are for just getting ear corn out. It's not for getting shelled grain out. That wouldn't work. So these doors I made, and I also made a sliding latch on the doors, but it didn't have a lock. It was just a wooden latch that you slide to open the door. On each side of that, I made panels. On each side of the door on the crib, I made panels, and in each panel, I cut out like an ear of corn with the shuck kind of sticking off of it, and you could tell it was an ear of corn the way I cut it out, just exactly like an ear of corn looks. And there was one of those on each side of that door. So I done some other decorative woodwork around some windows and stuff like that, but it looked real good, and I was proud of it and thankful for the opportunity to get to build this structure. I don't know what's going on with it now. I don't think it's being used right now. I could be mistaken, but from what I've heard, it's not. But like I say, I'm real thankful I got to build that, and it was a real special thing to me, and it always will be. One little detail that I wanted to tell you about: on the main floor, the stairs went up, and then they turned and went up into the attic space up in the very top of the mill. And a buddy of mine, that's an engineer, he came out one day to look at the mill, and he walked in and he was looking around. And the way I did these stairs, it was a little odd, because they went up and then they turned and went back up towards the center of the building. I don't know if you can envision that, but they was L-shaped. They went up by the wall and then they turned and L'd out towards the center of the building, and under all that there was nothing holding that up. In other words, these stairs were just hanging there. There's nothing under them supporting them. But how I done that, I went up into the roof system and I put in like a small timber that come down, and that was tied into the stairs right at that point where they made they had the winders and they made the turn. This timber came down right to that point, and it caught that stringer that holds them up to go up, and it looked like it wouldn't hold anybody up, but it was very strong. And when my engineer buddy went into the mill, he looked around, and he's an engineer, so he examines everything he looks at and thinks about how it works. And he said, Justin, I only see one problem. He said, those stairs. I said, what about them? He said, well, they're not supported. That's dangerous. And I walked over to the stairs, and I walked up there and got up there about halfway where it looked really weak, and I jumped up and down on him, and he said, he looked at me and smiled, and he said, never mind. So that was a good memory I've got of building that mill, and it was a kind of a funny thing that happened there. Not bragging on myself, but it was funny how it happened, and we both got a laugh out of it. And then he went up and he looked at how I'd done it, and then he understood, why it was so strong, looking so weak. So I guess there's a little lesson in that. Everything that may look weak is not necessarily weak. So we're gonna plan on doing another live, not this weekend, but the weekend after that. And I'm really excited about it. We've been wanting to do another one. It was really fun last time we did one. And I'm thinking on Sunday night again, probably around 8 o'clock. Seemed like a good time. I know some folks, a lot of folks goes to church service and whatnot on Sunday evening. So around 8 o'clock, it seems like the people that weren't able to make it for the beginning, they got there later on. So we'll plan on doing it 8 o'clock. Not this Sunday night, but the Sunday after that. I don't know right offhand what that date is, but I'll mention this, try to mention this on all my upcoming videos, and we'll get the date clear. And that's Eastern Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Not this coming Sunday, but the Sunday after. So it'd be 12 days away, I think it'd be right. We got some stuff to give away, and we're excited about that. We're going to have a little different approach on our giveaways, because I was thinking the way internet service is, some people's got real fast internet and some people's maybe watching on a phone or something. So it's never going to work for us to have something where it's like hard for everybody to get a word in at the same time, I guess you could say. But that's just my thinking. Everybody's got, you know, different ideas and whatnot, but that's the way we're going to do it and see how that works. We got another idea as to how to win a gift from Metcalf Mills, and we're excited about it. Look forward to that. Also, I got more videos coming up. Thank you for hanging in there. I missed y'all. I hope y'all are doing well. I'll tell you more about my trip later on, possibly. And I was kind of rounding up some, if you can believe it, something to do with grain mills. This is Justro at Metcalf Mills. I look forward to seeing you real soon.